kind of rhetoric about lawlessness from House Republicans for some time. I know that their most recent statement referred to Emperor Obama. The fact of the matter is, the president is somebody who is willing to examine the law, review the law, and use every element of that law to make progress for the American people. And that is, and if that is something that Republicans are critical of, then that's, maybe a criticism that the president wears with a badge of honor.
Yeah, I could see this president wearing the term emperor and king as a badge of honor. I could certainly see that. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to remind you before we get into this that we will have special live coverage tonight of President Obama's immigration speech at 8 p.m. Eastern Time right here on Newsmax TV and NewsmaxTV.com. And then that's going to be followed by the world premiere of I Killed Kennedy. It's a new, shocking documentary about the death of President Kennedy, and you will not want to miss it, I promise you. Our coverage, it all begins right here tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern. Don't forget about it. Ladies and gentlemen, Nancy Pelosi actually said this first, I think, back in January. I have a National Review piece by John S. Rosenberg in my hands. Tell you, it's right here. And he's speaking to what Nancy Pelosi said back then after the State of the Union. And she said that the president would be justified to act on immigration on his own, the way he's going to do. And she brings up the Emancipation Proclamation as an example of something President Lincoln did. And she said that that's basically the same thing as the President Obama going ahead and issuing an executive order on immigration. That's ludicrous, historically speaking and otherwise. She has no idea what she's talking about. There are no parallels to be made between the Emancipation Proclamation and this cockamamie executive order for lots of reasons. Joining us now is Dinesh D'Souza, conservative author and filmmaker. Hello, sir.
Hey, Steve, how are you? Good to be on the show.
I'm doing well. Thank you for joining us again. All right, so your take on what's ahead of us tonight and what the president's about to do.
Well, I was listening to your comment about Nancy Pelosi and the absurdity. Well, first of all, remember that the African Americans who were emancipated in the Civil War had been brought to this country by our decision, i.e., not against their will, and what Lincoln...
All right, we're having some technical difficulties. Maybe we could just get Dinesh on the phone, which I think he probably sounded like he was on the phone. We could get him back, hopefully. Is he there?
Is he there or no?
Dinesh? All right. Hopefully we'll get him back. And it's interesting because slavery was not ended by an act of Congress. Slavery was ended by the 13th Amendment. And it is also the president at that time, Dinesh. Go ahead.
Well, the point I was making was that number one, the African Americans were brought here to this country against their will. And second of all, Lincoln was really clear that the Emancipation Proclamation was a war measure. The country was in the middle of a bloody civil war, and this was intended as a military strategy to tip the balance in favor of the North. Now, just contrast that with what Obama's doing. Obama is the chief executive. The legislature makes laws. His job is to carry them out. And what he's basically saying is he's gotten annoyed, he's getting impatient, so he's not going to carry out the laws. And that's the classic definition of lawlessness. And it's particularly dismaying that it's coming from the chief executive.
Yeah, and before, while we were trying to get you, we had Josh Earnest saying that if he's called emperor by Republicans, he'll wear that as a badge of honor. How do you think he squares? I mean, how does he get away with all the statements he's made over the past couple of years that he cannot do what he's about to do? That there's no legal defense for it. It'll be unconstitutional. All they have to do is take him to court and play his own words back.
Well, first of all, Steve, I believe that this is a man who has been spoiled rotten since he was a kid. And ever since he has been president, we have to admit that he has been on a 6-year honeymoon. There's a line in Julius Caesar which says, Caesar would not be a wolf if the Romans were not but sheep. And the fact of the matter is that most of the media has allowed Obama to get away with it. He knows that, and therefore, in a sense, he acts as if he's with complete immunity. As long as we have a kind of a courtier press that, like the courtiers in the French court, would just flatter the aristocrats, Obama can act like the Duke or the Dauphin and just do whatever he wants. So he has been spoiled by a certain kind of immunity that he's enjoyed. And now that we have a Republican Senate and a Republican House, it's time for that honeymoon to end.
All right, well, Dinesh, maybe we'll try to get you back tomorrow so you could respond to the speech. I'm sorry with the technical difficulties. We're out of time. Let's try to get you back tomorrow. We'll have our guys work on that, Rich. Thank you very much. We're coming back, folks, with Alan Dershowitz, You and the Law.
Have you ever been stopped by a policeman for a traffic violation? Of course you have. Millions of Americans are regularly stopped by the police for traffic violations and other reasons. Now here's the question. Is it legal for you to surreptitiously hit the record button on your smartphone and tape the conversation with the police? Well, it all depends on which state you were stopped. If you were in about a dozen states like Massachusetts, California, or Florida, don't go near your record button. In Massachusetts, the top court has ruled that recording a policeman is a crime unless you tell the cop you're doing it. Many states have privacy laws that make secret recording of anyone illegal. And in some states, you're free to record the policeman in the exercise of their duty, but not to record other ordinary citizens. Illinois passed a draconian law saying that if you tape a police officer on the job, you could face as much as 15 years in prison. An appellate court overturned the law, and the Supreme Court upheld that specific ruling, but it failed to rule on the issue as a whole. The Massachusetts case was particularly egregious because the cops were spouting racist talk to an African-American driver who recorded the conversation to protect himself. Instead of the cop being fired, the victim of the racist talk was prosecuted. Bad decision, but it's still the law in that state. In 38 states like New York and Virginia, it's legal to turn on the record button, but don't do it. In general, I advise you not to, because if the policeman catches you, he might figure out some way of getting even. And don't forget that in almost all states, it's legal for the police to audio and videotape you. Many police, even on traffic stops, have microphones attached to their body and are recording your comments. In other